Hi everybody, Dr. Shook here. Hope you're doing well today. Today what I want to talk to you about is why millions of people miss the chance to save their brain. And I say this because we know with the current statistics that dementia, Alzheimer's disease, all these neurodegenerative conditions where the brain deteriorates is exploding in growth. It's exploding in growth. Right now, there are 36 million people with dementia. By 2030, that's expected to double. So say 60, 70 million. By 2050, it's expected to double again. So somewhere around 120 to 140 million people with dementia. It is predicted to bankrupt all healthcare systems. The World Health Organization came together and said, what do we do to these people? How do we help them? Because the cost of caring for them would be more than the cost that the countries can produce in gross domestic product. It is an unbelievably high amount of expense. And caretakers, I mean, there aren't enough caretakers. What do we do with people when they can no longer care for themselves? They no longer know who they are. They no longer know anyone around them. What can we do? We have to figure out a solution. And fortunately, there are some brilliant researchers. I've had an opportunity to learn from the first researcher to publish scientific literature, a UCLA researcher, reversing cognitive decline in Alzheimer's. And currently, thousands of people are going through this process. I am one of a few of the doctors that are qualified practitioners that have gone through this training. And so I'm going to share with you some of the information and insights that I have learned from people that have published literature on reversing Alzheimer's and cognitive decline and how we work with people all around the world across the United States to do this. Okay? So the problem with saving your brain is that most people are unaware of the symptoms. They don't recognize or understand what's happening to them. And sometimes it's hard to understand. You think it's something that's transient, we push it off, and we don't want to recognize it as a problem with our brain. But there are absolutely some red flags and things you need to be aware of. Now, if you have brain fog, okay, so you have difficulty concentrating, difficulty thinking, difficulty organizing your thoughts, staying organized, staying on task. Brain fog is a huge red flag for cognitive dysfunction, for cognitive decline. And the reason for it is because whenever the brain is inflamed, whenever it is not functioning optimally, you will have problems with concentration and focus and this general term brain fog. This is a major red flag that something is wrong that you need to address. Okay? People ignore this for years and say, oh, it's just the way it is. I'm going to just drink more coffee, keep going. That's how everybody is. They don't even know that it's not normal. Okay? Big problem. Number two, they're unaware and they don't recognize the earliest signs of memory loss. So they don't even recognize the fact that they are losing their memory. So people will lose their ability to remember numbers. They'll lose their ability to remember phone numbers, for example, or they'll lose their ability to recognize a face and a name, put a face and a name together. They'll forget familiar directions. You know, their short-term memory is just not the same. They forget words for objects and it's delayed time for word recall. These are major problems that signal that are red flags for cognitive decline and early stages of cognitive loss, which I'll explain to you the spectrum here in a second. They also start forgetting faces, names, and directions. What I was just telling you. These are some of the earliest warning signs. Now I'm going to tell you that when you look at cognitive decline and these issues with brain decline, there's a spectrum. Okay, it's not you go from being normal with great memory and focus and function and good energy levels to someone that has Alzheimer's like that. That's not the classic progression. What happens is that it starts with SCI, or subjective cognitive impairment. So you notice first that you have brain fog. You notice that you don't recall things as well, that your processing abilities have declined, that you can't stay focused as well. You are aware of it. Okay, now you may not attribute it until someone like me tells you, be aware. Listen to yourself, listen to your body, and be aware of these problems. That these are signs of brain decline, but memory loss. You forget the person's, you can look at someone's face and you're like, I can't remember their name, I know their name, I've met them several times. So you forget, you can't put names and faces together. And then you lose your ability to really have and find good direction, or remember your direction, or the way to and from a place that you might commonly travel. So these are all critical signs that you have to be aware of. Now, if you notice these things, those are red flags. You need to be aware, and we'll talk about what you need to do about it in a second. Now, the other thing is if someone does know about this, they just don't even know that there's anything that can be done. They're not even aware that this can be helped, because until very recently, actually 2016 was when the first paper was published on reversing cognitive decline and mild cognitive impairment and Alzheimer's. And there are thousands of people that are currently going through these protocols. I've been fortunate enough to be trained in these protocols and to understand how to work it up and implement strategies to help people improve the driving factors behind these symptoms, behind subjective cognitive impairment, which is the first stage. So that's going to be step 1. You lose cognitive abilities that you're aware of, but if you were to do a test to evaluate cognitive function, it probably wouldn't show up. Okay, that's stage 1. Stage 2 is MCI, mild cognitive impairment. Now, this is where this problem has progressed, and now neuropsychological testing can tell us and evaluate this problem. Number 3 is Alzheimer's. Okay, Alzheimer's, where it's much more progressed. Now, we use, there are a lot of great tools, but we use the Montreal Cognitive Assessment Form to give us a baseline for people. It's a very helpful tool. But this is the progression. So you want to catch this as early as possible. But you just need to understand, first of all, be aware that if you're having any of these symptoms, that is a brain-based problem. If you're on the spectrum somewhere, or if you know someone's on the spectrum, then they are unaware that it can be helped, right? But it can be helped. So let's talk about this. So people are unaware that you can do anything about it. Now, the research that was published showed us that there are 6 subtypes of Alzheimer's disease. They're basically 6 different problems, guys. 6 different types of Alzheimer's. They are subtypes. This is critically important to understand. 6 different drivers, basically it's 6 different diseases. People have said, you know what, this is not even the same thing. It results in the same imaging, the same, the brain looks the same. It results in the same type of decline with neurological and cognitive functions, but it's a different type because it's driven by a different problem. Now, the issue is that these subtypes, most people have overlap of multiple types. But what you have to do is you have to understand that these subtypes, and I'll go through them in a second, that the subtypes are all being promoted by something. So, for example, the first subtype, type 1, is inflammatory. Type 1 Alzheimer's is inflammatory. So the drivers of an inflammatory type might be a chronic infection. Someone has a chronic bacterial infection that they don't even know exists. You look at their white blood cells to see if their immune system, their white blood cells are high, and they may not be high. They may actually be suppressed a bit, not lab low, but near the lower end. And they could have a chronic infection in their gut and not even know it. We see it all the time. Maybe they have herpes virus that is chronically activated. Maybe they have a parasite of some type that's driving an inflammatory process. Maybe they have oral infections. They have infections in their teeth, in their mouth, that are festering and in the circulatory system and making their way into the brain. Okay, that we know that these are some of the drivers. So inflammatory. And so there's drivers of the inflammatory process. The second type, which is actually called 1.5, is glycotoxic. It means blood sugar. Listen, guys, if you look through the scientific literature, you can just look up type 3 diabetes, and you're going to see right beside of it the word Alzheimer's. Okay, type 3 diabetes, and you'll see right beside of it the word Alzheimer's. The reason is that the scientists are calling type 3 diabetes Alzheimer's. It's diabetes of the brain. It's what it is it really comes down to blood sugar fluctuations, spikes and dips. And when you have swings in blood sugar, especially high blood sugar, it is toxic. You make something called glycosylated end products, and you end up damaging the neurons and the vasculature, the tiny vessels that supply blood to the neurons, your nerves. You damage them to the point that they collapse, and then the nerves start to die. Okay, that happens in the brain. This is a major problem because there's so much diabetes, so many people with diabetes in the world, but also in the U.S. This is one of the reasons that they're expecting and projecting this problem to bankrupt every country. I mean, it's going to be a major problem. This is why we have to understand these factors, and we have to teach the public there are things that can be done, and some workup needs to be done to help people prevent it. This should be. We've got to get the word out for these drivers and this problem, because so many people are at risk. So many people have loved ones that are suffering with this. We've got to do better. So glycotoxics, type 1.5. Type 2 is atrophic. Atrophic meaning don't have the nutrients or the hormones to help your body to keep the neurons or your nerve cells healthy. So hormones are very important for neurological function. Vitamins and minerals, very important. You've got type 3, which is toxic. It's toxic. Alzheimer's, type 3 is toxic. So it can be mold exposure in a home. How many people have mold exposure? It drives chronic inflammatory responses in people. How many people have issues with Lyme disease? Lots of people have Lyme disease. It's spreading across the United States. It's a big problem, chronic inflammation. How many people have high levels of mercury and other metals and chemicals in their body? So many people have that. And it's not just from mercury fillings, it's from food, it's from fish, it's from exposure to the environment. I mean, we are bombarded with 85,000 industrial and agricultural chemicals today. 85,000, many of which have never been tested for human safety. And if you just check someone on the street, there was a study done where they were just checking people on the street. The average person had something like 300 to 600 different chemicals. And these were people that didn't work around it or anything. They're just living their life in the normal, exposures that we get day to day. We get in our car when it's hot and it smells a little different, and it's because all of these chemicals are pouring out of the foam, out of the fabric, out of the dashboard. Excuse me. And we're not even aware of it. We're just breathing it in. One of the best things you can do is open your door or roll down your windows before you get in. Okay? So you got to address root causes. This is critical. You've got to understand these factors and address root causes. Now, all of these factors here, this is published, peer-reviewed research that was published in 2016. I mean, there are dozens of papers that have been published now. But this is really important. All of these factors, what they do is biochemically, they trigger a switch, a molecular switch that's on every nerve cell in the body. It's called the APP switch, amyloid precursor protein. In the brains of people with Alzheimer's, they form amyloid plaques, neurofibrillary tangles. They lose brain mass. The neurons retract. This is all, these drivers have all been identified biochemically through research to trigger and flip this molecular switch in such a way that it promotes beta amyloid plaque formation, neurofibrillary tangles, neurite retraction, loss of brain density, all those things. This is key. This is the biochemical mechanism through which these things are working, okay? This amyloid precursor protein. Now, the key thing to take away from this is that there is not one single reason that people develop Alzheimer's, okay? It is actually different types of Alzheimer's. They're actually, they say they're different altogether with their factors. Most people have a blending of these drivers and overlap. So someone might have infections, they may be nutrient deficient, they may live in a home that's moldy. There you go, okay? But there's toxic is type 3, type 4 is cerebrovascular and hypoxic. Decreased oxygen delivery to the brain will create major issues. Decreased blood flow, which is cerebrovascular, major issues with brain function. And then type 5 is traumatic. Okay, so head trauma is a major problem for brain health. So that's actually 6 types, because we had 1, 1.5, 2, 3, 4, and then we had 5. So six total subtypes. 36 drivers, of which, what I understand from researchers that are actually researching the drivers of cognitive decline, they're expected to see 50 to 100, they think, before we are finished really, and we have all the information on Alzheimer's and cognitive decline. These are all drivers that will trip this molecular switch and create a lot of problems for you with loss of neuron function and health and all the things we mentioned, okay? So the important thing to understand here is that you've got to address these root causes. There are root causes. Many of them have been identified. Using this information, people are reversing, halting, slowing the progression of cognitive decline in Alzheimer's. It is a real thing. You've just got to understand that there are real driving factors. And I mean, we've all heard things, you know, it shouldn't be a huge surprise. When you do things to the body that cause it to be systemically unhealthy. You've got chronic inflammation. I mean, we've all heard that inflammation is the cause of all chronic diseases, right? It's the cause of all degeneration. And to a degree, I would agree with that. You've got to understand that some things, the things that make you generally not well, cause all systems to decline. So why would we not think that being unhealthy, chronic infections, deficient in certain things, living in mold where it's this chronic exposure, you know, having arterial disease where we can't get blood, how would we not think that that's going to cause massive decline throughout the body? I mean, I think everyone agrees with that. It's just people didn't realize the degree that these particular subtypes had on brain health and brain function. But the brain is very, very sensitive to a lot of disturbances metabolically. So we've got to take very good care of it. But you've got to address the root causes. So step one is you've just got to know, be aware first of all that it can be helped. Then the next thing you've got to do is you got to say, okay, since we know most of the factors that drive this and people are already reversing these problems, well, how do we determine what what my unique problems are? What type of risk subtypes am I? How many of these drivers do I have? When you have that data, then that's where the world opens up. That's when you can, what I say is we detect first. So we detect the drivers. We evaluate as many of the drivers as possible and we detect what's going on. Then we work to remove those drivers. So if there are infections or other problems, we want to work to get rid of them, obviously. If there are deficiencies, we want to replace them. We want to give the body, take out what's stopping it from functioning normally, give it what it needs, right? And that's the remove. We could call that remove, replenish. And then we repair. Repair is next. So once we've worked on removing and replenishing, then what we want to do is when the body and the brain is in a healthier state, we want to focus on optimizing new neural connections. Because once you lose neurons, which are your nerve cells, you do not get those back. They are gone forever. They do not multiply and divide through a process called mitosis, where the cells, 1 becomes 2, 2 becomes 4, 4 becomes 8. They don't do that. They are post-mitotic, meaning they no longer divide. But what you can do with neurons is you can make new neural connections. Now, that's if, think of it this way, the trees are close enough to touch, right? The branches are close enough to touch. If you thin out a forest so much that the branches can't even touch, then you can't make a neurological signal. So the time is of the essence for this, guys. You've got to address these factors before you lose a lot of neurons, before the trees are so thin that the branches can't touch, okay? That's where you're going to have major problems. But if we do, we work on repairing. There's a lot of things that we can do physically, supplementally, dietarily that can really help with this process. So I want to share this with you because this is really important information. And if you're suffering with this, or a loved one is suffering with this, or someone that you know, and you would like some help, we will help you as much as we possibly can. I am trained. I'm a Bredesen qualified practitioner. And I understand, I know how to work this up. I know how to help people get the help they need and start working on reversing this process of cognitive decline. If you need help, just reach out to us and we will help you. I work with people all around the world in other countries, and what we do is we help them to go through this process. We take very detailed health history information. Based on that information, I'll make recommendations on testing. We will get testing and we will detect the drivers that are promoting the process to the best of our ability. Then we'll take that information and we will work on removing the problems and replenishing things that the body needs so that you can have optimal physiological function, and better brain health. And then once we've done that, we work on repairing and optimizing that neurological function. So we work on things to actually improve the neurological pathways and brain health. Okay? So if you need help, just let us know. We work with people everywhere. We work with people across the United States. Yes, we can help you get testing where you are. Yes, we can work with you via phone, Skype, FaceTime, wherever you are, just like as if you were in the office. Okay? So we will work with you. Now, I work with a lot of people that have thyroid dysfunction and autoimmunity, okay, very extensively. If you're one of those people, you will go to new.thyroidconsult.com, because a lot of people with thyroid dysfunction, listen, the number one symptom is going to be brain fog, fatigue, and energy problems. Those all are major predisposing factors to cognitive decline. I mean, it is, listen, thyroid hormone, deficiency of thyroid hormone falls under the category of atrophic type 2, right? Not you don't have enough hormone to stimulate the neurons to be healthy. That's atrophic. You're missing a hormone. Now, if you have Hashimoto's or an autoimmune process, what is that? That's inflammatory. Falls under type 1 subtype. So you've already got a combination of things that predispose you to neurological decline. And if Alzheimer's runs in your family, you might have an APOE4 variant that predisposes you to either a 30 to 90% increased risk of Alzheimer's. It is not the scenario that you want. And if you do, listen, don't waste time. Let me help you. I will do the very best that I can for you, and we will work to address these factors that are promoting these problems and try to help you feel as healthy as possible, get as healthy as possible, and preserve your brain health. Now, if you're someone that's dealing with cognitive decline, you think you're worried about Alzheimer's, you're worried because you have Alzheimer's in your family, and it's throughout the family. Listen, you need to have what we call a cognoscopy, right? You think of a colonoscopy where they go and they look in the intestines for polyps and cancerous, things that could indicate a disease process and catch it early. It's the same concept. A cognoscopy is a process of evaluating these factors very thoroughly before you progress to mild cognitive impairment or Alzheimer's. So if you're dealing with, if you've got a family history of Alzheimer's, you go ahead and figure out what's going on, because you likely have a genetic variant that predisposes you to developing Alzheimer's. It's called the APOE4 variant. Now, there are numerous genetic variants that we want to consider. Okay, it's really important to understand that. There are numerous genetic variants, but the APOE4 is the single greatest predisposing risk factor for cognitive decline. Okay, so if you're dealing with brain-based issues, go to new.alzconsult.com. That's new.alzconsult.com, and you can learn more about our Saving the Brain program. But if you have thyroid or autoimmunity, you can go here. And guys, these blend and overlap perfectly. I mean, they're very similar in the workup that I do with people. But if you have a brain problem and you know it, go here, because it'll be a little bit more specific to you. If you have a thyroid and autoimmune problem and you know that, go here. If you have both of them, if you've got a brain problem, and go. If you're thyroid related and you know it, go here. If you have autoimmunity, go here. Okay. If you have cognitive decline, check out this page. But anyway, if you guys need anything, please just let us know. Reach out to us. We will do everything we can to help you. Leave your questions, comments here, and I'll do the best to answer them and try to give you guidance and direction. But listen, guys, don't suffer with this. Take an inventory of yourself. Do you have these problems? If you do, be honest with yourself. You cannot let this stuff linger. And then, it can be helped. Let us know if we can help you. We'll do everything that we possibly can. But I appreciate you spending this time with me today. And if you need anything, don't hesitate to reach out to us. But I appreciate you guys. Hope you have a wonderful, wonderful day. Thanks.